Hello, my name is LoG, and welcome to Quickies number 23, where I show you something that I think is cool in 5 minutes or less. Today we're going to talk about the importance of cycling through chord progressions underneath a melody that you are writing. Oftentimes in the beginning, when people are putting together melodies for a song, whether it's on guitar, vocals, or something else, they'll put a lot of time and effort into the melody itself, meaning the notes of the melody, the rhythms, the phrases, all that stuff, which of course is a great idea. But they'll also tend to put less time on the chord progressions happening behind them. And the problem with that is the way that your audience interprets the feeling or the general emotion of your melody is entirely determined by the chord progression, because the notes in your melody sound different depending on what the chord is. If you're playing a particular note over a particular chord, you can make it sound very kind of up and peppy and calm and happy, I guess. But then you can take that same exact note, not changing the note or the melody at all, but change the chord underneath, and then all of a sudden it sounds maybe kind of strange or maybe dissonant or dark or somber or serious by simply changing the chord. So if you're not doing that, if you're not experimenting with different chords under your melody, you're missing out on a great opportunity to make your melody really special, or maybe just take it in a direction that you weren't originally trying, and that could turn it into a totally different thing. So I'm going to demonstrate that with a very simple melody that I'm playing in the key of C, and my two chords for the melody are C and G, 1 and 5. The melody sounds like this. About as simple as you can possibly get, right? My melody is really just this. So that's just C, D, E, D, C, B. And you'll notice there's two chords. The C chord handles the first batch of notes, and then the G chord handles that final B, right? And of course it sounds perfect over those chords because all of those notes are functioning in a very normal, straightforward way. In particular, that final B that I'm ending on. That note sounds really good, or perfectly smooth, I should say, over G, because it's in the chord, it's the third of the chord. But it also sounds maybe a little plain, maybe a little bit more normal, or more generic, or more similar to stuff you've already heard in your life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that exact melody, keep the first chord, but cycle through every chord in the key for the second chord. And you can see every time I land on that B, it will be a little bit different. The vibe will change every time because the chord is changing. So I'm going to cycle through every chord in the key of C. I'm going to play C into C, C into D minor, C into E minor, C into F, C into G, C into A minor, C into B diminished, and we'll see how that second chord hit changes the vibe. Here's C into C, right? I'm holding C, I'm not going to G like I did earlier, playing the same melody but holding C. Kind of interesting, like a soft sound right there, because I'm playing major 7 by playing that final B note of the melody while playing C this time, right? Pretty cool. Let's try the 2 chord D minor, C into D minor. Already pretty different. Especially this one, because when I play D minor, 1, 3, 5 of D minor, flat 3, and I play B at the same time, that's a minor 6 chord. So you're getting this sort of sound, like a kind of odd, maybe mysterious sound. Again, not changing the melody. Melody is exactly the same, just changing the chord. How about the next chord, 3 chord, E minor? Right? That chord always has this like suddenly sad, sort of somber sound that happens immediately. So if you're going for that vibe, maybe I can slow the tempo. Very different than my original choice, right? How about C into F, the 4 chord? That's another really colorful one, because that B is functioning as F's color note, the sharp 4, which is the color note of a 4 chord, what I'm playing right there. C to G, the original. That's kind of the more plain, kind of normal one, right? How about C to A minor? Another really common one, 1 to 6. Kind of fill out that chord with that C on top. How about C to B diminished? Right, I'm going to fill this one out a little bit too. Super different than the original choice, and every single one of those kind of pulls my ear, pushes my ear to a different direction that I maybe wouldn't have thought of if I wasn't experimenting with all the chords like this, right? And all I'm doing is just swapping out the second chord. Now obviously you can do the same thing but swap out the first chord, so run through every chord in the key starting on a different one for the first one, and maybe keep the second one the same thing, right? You can of course do that. So for example, how about I start the melody on the 4 chord, for the first chord. Then go to G, right? So that's 4 to 5. Or how about 4 to 6? That's a really common one. How about 4 to 2? Also cool, 4 to 7. All really different choices, and I'm just simply cycling through. I'm not even like doing anything like difficult. I'm just cycling through all the chords that are in the key while maintaining the melody. The next thing you can do that's also fun, that's also kind of will really point your ear in different directions, is start to forget about the key and play chords that just simply have the B functioning in the chord, that final note. Excuse me. That one final melody note. Find chords that have that note in the chord regardless of if that chord is in the key. So I'm going to play, how about this, C into this. This is like F sharp minor, and I can play that because I know B is the 4 of that chord and I really like that sound. I'm just going to see what happens. Already pulling my ear in a very different direction because A, the chord is kind of coming out of nowhere, not in the key, and that B is functioning over in that chord in an interesting way. Let's try getting into that with a different one. How about F to F sharp? Already pretty cool. How about G into that? Again, all these different choices just by cycling through some sounds. What's another chord that's not in the key that has B in it? What about B7? That's not in the key. Let's try C to B7. Already pretty cool. How about A minor to B7? One more time. Super different vibe, again, just by throwing in that chord. How about the really common one? How about E major or E7? That feels kind of like it would, of course, go to A minor because that's the 5 of A minor. But you cycle through stuff like that. Really cool options, right? Really cool sounds that, again, pull your ear in directions that you wouldn't naturally think if you're just picking a bass chord progression and then just moving on, not thinking about it. And then the last thing you can do, which kind of, again, will yield new things because you're forcing yourself in a new position, is change the fingering for your melodies. So far, I've pretty much been playing it the same way. Kind of this open position, very like acoustic guitar style. But if I did something like this, right, just playing the same exact thing, but doing a little slide, taking me to a new spot, notice my hand is now here, and that opens up some chords that maybe would be a little awkward to get to if I kept playing the melody right here. So I could do this. What did I play? That was me playing the same melody and ending on this A minor. Even though it's the same A minor, really, I'm playing A minor 7, this allows me to play the open B string and the C at the same time, giving me this, that like minor 9 sound. I could do the same thing with D minor. And that might yield me going like, something like that, feeling out the sound to get just a different thing by simply moving the melody to a different position. And then you can do both things, change the fingering, moving into a new spot, and try to play some chords that are not in the key. So I was messing around with this one, right? Pretty different chord. It's like a B flat 6/9 if you want to call it that. Doesn't really matter what it is, just sounds cool. And I notice I like how this chord sounds, but getting into it from B happening before is a little odd because B is a little strange with B flat in the bass. So I'm now going to modify the melody so that it works with this chord. I've discovered a chord sound, to me, that is more important than retaining the melody. So I'm going to change the melody because I really want this chord to work. So now what I'm going to do is this. Right? So I changed the melody. Instead of going C, B, I went C, D, because I know that D is going to work over this new chord that I discovered. And that's really nice. Again, just experimenting, I've now discovered this new thing that is wildly different than anything I've done so far. So that's really the whole point of this. Don't neglect the chord progression when you are writing your melodies. Of course, think about your melody, focus on that, get it to where you want it to be, but take that extra moment to start cycling through chords underneath. Don't be afraid to play stuff that's out of the key as long as it works with your melody, and don't be afraid to change the fingering of your melody, of course, if you're playing it on guitar. So hopefully all this stuff makes sense. To wrap up this video, I did a very, very short little demonstration of this where I'm playing my melody with a bunch of different chords, cycling through things every time, and you'll notice the variety of sounds you can get just by going through this process. Hopefully you enjoy this one. See you the next time.